And we're
Yep.
live on YouTube and Facebook. What is going on, everybody? Can you hear us okay? Got our mic up there.
Hopefully I connected everything correctly.
Nice. My feet
Hello,
stink
hello.
right now.
Oh, good.
You smell them? I smell
Nope.
them. Took my running shoes off.
Don't. Trevor says, "Yo."
What's up, y'all? What's up? So we're kicking off today with a conversation around fed or fasted training. So do you train fasted or in a fed state? You want to start?
I will tell you guys what I do. I prefer to work out in a fasted state. I will have a little bit of heavy cream in my coffee, so maybe a little bit of something in my like pre-workout, I guess you would consider. But I prefer to eat on an empty stomach just because I work out so early in the day, and I also just feel a lot better if I do work out with something in my stomach. I usually tend to feel like heavy or maybe a little bit nauseous or something like that. And if you do decide to eat pre-workout, I would go ahead and do it like an hour before your workout.
Yeah. So the old bodybuilding bro science belief is that if you eat a bunch of food prior to training, then a lot of the blood that's in your body is going to rush to your stomach and not be in the muscle tissue. Not really sure if that's all true or not. There's some studies that indicate that that is the case, or some that indicate that that's just an old wives' tale. Not really sure. However, I will say that I get a much better pump if I am training fasted. So that leads me to believe that I'm probably getting better blood flow in the absence of having a stomach full of food. So that's kind of my take on that. I feel like I have more energy, I have more cognition, I have more mental clarity. I just feel lighter on my feet, more agile, more nimble, and honestly, I don't feel like having a lot of food on my gut improves my strength at all. So I'm not really worried about that, especially if you're on a ketogenic diet. If you're keto adapted, then you're not really trying to, you know, maximize your glycogen stores with a heavy carb up meal right before you train and expend a lot of energy. So if you're keto adapted, then I feel like you're gonna be much more, benefiting from being in a fasted state with your training. Also, a lot of it depends on when your training is. If I'm training first thing in the morning, which is what we do, the meal that I have at night, the night before that training session, that's what's fueling the next day's workout. So if I eat in the evening, the next morning when I wake up and train, that meal that I had that prior evening, that's what's fueling that workout. So I'm really good to go there. I don't need to have a meal full or a belly full of food. However, if I'm training much later in the day, then I probably would eat something. If I'm training around noon, I'd probably still.
We used to do that.
Yeah, if we train around noon, I probably still would not eat. However, if I'm training later in the afternoon, I'm definitely going to have a meal prior to that training session. Unless I'm doing an OMAD style approach, in which case I may still wait until after I train. But if I'm training in the afternoon and I'm not doing OMAD, then I'm probably going to go ahead and have a meal sometime before. At least 3 hours before, though. If I have a meal closer than 3 hours of my training session, I just feel more lethargic. Any other key pointers?
No.
We got any questions on that? Fasting for sure.
Hello from Cincinnati. What's your height, sir?
5'8". Can you give me 5'8"? Crystal says I'm 5'7.5".
He is 5'7". I didn't even give you a half. It's just 5'7". Jonathan, what's up?
Hey, my keto fam. I hope your week is going great. Hoorah from the troops at Camp Lejeune USMC. Is that pronounced right?
Good.
Lejeune. What's up, vintage girls?
Auntie and Uncle and Aunt Savage. I love that.
Who's that?
Jonathan.
Jay saying the Keto Road. The Keto
Adam,
Road.
we miss you this week on our live.
I know, we had Adam in last week.
I was you.
Any questions?
Not quite yet.
Just going through the IG here. We need some questions.
Great topic. That's funny.
Yeah, this is the one that
Adam is the one that said that.
Yeah, he's the one that said that.
Yeah,
I'll also say the same thing for cardio. Like if I'm going to be doing a bunch of running or getting my heart rate up quite a bit, I don't want to have a belly full of food. I feel like that's more likely to just come up.
Chad C. Love is on.
What's his question?
He didn't have a question. He just said he was just on there. Oh. Chad, my brother.
What's up, Chad?
Adam said you're 6'5". Hello
So
from Minnesota. I miss Arkansas. All right.
we need some questions.
Okay, so yeah, do you guys have any questions about pre or even post workout? Should we talk about post workout meals?
Yeah, my whole take on that is like I just try and I don't need to worry about getting a meal in and slamming a protein shake immediately post training. Like your window is pretty broad there for really capitalizing on muscle protein synthesis. I try and hedge my bets by at least getting a solid meal in within about 2 hours of my training. As long as I'm getting a meal in within 2 hours, I'm good. Unless I'm trying to prioritize like fasted or something like that. Right now, you want to talk before I dive into what I was about to say?
Oh boy. Yeah, mine is not 2 hours. I usually try to get food in within like about 3 hours after a workout. Because after a workout, I'm just typically not that hungry. So, I just kind of let my body do its thing, and then I eat like about three hours after my workout. But I don't think that the timing is necessarily as important as people have made it in the past, and maybe that's just because we're keto adapted. But yeah, I don't think it's as important as people like make it out to be. But continue. What are you doing now? People want to
Annabelle
know.
says, doing my first contest prep and planning on doing a keto style prep, crystal style. Awesome.
Ooh, yeah.
Best of luck with that. So I figured it is relevant. We're talking about fasting around training. I'm doing a fast right now, and I'm doing an extended fast. We could probably do a whole topic on extended fast.
We
I don't
should
know if
just
we
do that
want to
next
dive
week.
into that. Yeah, we'll dive into that next week. I'm also going to put a video out, but I'm doing extended fast now. I started my fast on Sunday at 7 p.m., and I'm not going to break it until Saturday at 7 a.m. I think we calculated that at, 132 hours or something like that.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't recommend doing an extended fast in the context of being in a caloric deficit. However, I am now in a caloric surplus, eating about 4,700 calories a day. So my body's primed to kind of like wipe the slate clean after doing my contest prep and my reverse diet. That's why I'm doing a fast right now. I've been training every single day. People do not train when they're doing an extended fast. I don't necessarily recommend not training. However, I've timed this so that I'm doing a deload week during this week of extended fasting. So lighter intensity, lighter weight, less volume, but I'm still stimulating the muscles every single day. I'm still running every single day. I'm still burning through any glycogen I have. My blood glucose, I tested, I was like 59 a minute ago, and my ketones
Really?
were 3.
Whoa.
Yeah,
Wow, that's
pretty crazy.
crazy. Daryl says having trouble losing fat, good way to do so.
You want to take that one?
No, go for it.
I've
You're
been
on a
talking.
roll.
You talk. Say something.
I've been talking. Okay, so Daryl, is that I just
Yeah.
said that? Yeah, okay. So first of all, Robert and I will both agree on this that you have to be at a maintenance or surplus in calories in order to start. We always suggest slowly tapering your macros and slowly tapering your calories down. If you are at a low calorie currently, you cannot continue to decrease your calories or maintain that and expect a difference. You need to reset your metabolism, start back up with a higher amount of calories, and then work your way back down. Using fasting is a really great way if you've kind of just like stalled out. Make sure that your stall is an actual stall. Don't just say like my weight has stopped moving for 2 weeks and I need to do something crazy. 2 weeks is totally normal for your body to maintain the same, but constantly adding more and more pressure to your macros, to your cardio. Are you working out? Are you being active? Things like that. So there's a lot of different things that you can use, increasing your exercise, trying to start fasting or intermittent fasting, playing around with your macros and all that kind of stuff. But those are all really good places to start. Hello from Indiana.
Mark says, since I'm loving the benefits of fasting, but lately I'm not hitting my macro budget because after second meal, not really hungry anymore.
Okay,
Loving the benefits of fasting lately. So are you doing intermittent fasting or are you doing like extended fasting or what? If you're doing like extended fasting, you don't really have a macro budget. But if you're not, then you would. So
and you want to make sure you're hitting all of your macros because you don't want to fast and undereat.
yeah, you don't want to be in a deficit and fast because that's just too much stress on the body.
Unless you're going to do a long-term fast and then you don't eat at all and then you make sure you get back to your regular routine of eating.
Yes.
Jonathan says, yeah, it depends on what I'm doing that day. On my marathon training days, I run fasted and then I will eat before I lift. If I am not running, I lift fasted. Trevor says, I typically train fasted as I feel best on that, especially when cutting. Currently, I am playing with eating about 60 to 90 minutes pre workout. I'm keeping it fairly clean, light and clean 5 eggs, 8 ounces of coffee, 50 milliliters of heavy cream.
Yeah, if I do I'll do like a fatty coffee before I train, and that
Mm-hmm.
to me, it's definitely breaking your fats. There's calories in it, but it's not like a meal that sits heavy on my stomach. But
Yeah.
a little bit of food, like a fatty coffee, works really well.
Keto Sasquatch says, anabolic window, fact or fiction?
There is definitely a fact to that, but the anabolic window is longer than the bro dieting community would like you to believe. Like
Mm-hmm.
traditional dogma is like if you don't get a protein shake in within 20 minutes of your workout, then you're just wasting away into nothing. That's not the case. Um, I don't try and go all day long without eating after a hard workout. I try and eat within a few hours, but you have some flexibility there.
Optimal electrolyte balance, how much salt per day versus potassium? Robert and I tend to do a 2 to 1. So whatever you're doing sodium, do half of that in potassium. I generally try to stick around 3 to 4,000 milligrams of sodium, which would put me at 15 to 2,000 milligrams of potassium.
Arlene says, speaking of macros, a lot of people are going higher protein and cutting fat
Mm-hmm.
to lose body fat. This has me all confused. Thoughts on that? All
Yeah.
right, this is a whole conversation topic in itself right here. You can get cut with high protein, you can get cut with high fat. I actually just recorded a podcast with Sean Baker, and that's going to go live next week, but we talked about this in depth. So I always gravitate towards a higher fat ratio, and here's why. When you're keto adapted, your fat is your fuel source, your fat is your energy. Why would you want to deplete your energy and your fuel when you're already depleting your body by being in a caloric deficit? So if you're truly keto adapted, then I often recommend keeping that fat ratio relatively high so that your brain can function at a higher rate, your hormones stay more stable, your metabolic functions are more in tune. If you go super high protein, your body can get energy from that because it can convert that to glucose through gluconeogenesis, but that's not really an efficient process. So you're going to feel more like a zombie. This is why people that go through a competition prep following a traditional method of high protein, very low and look and perform like zombies the last month of their prep because they
Mm-hmm.
don't have a very efficient fuel source. If you're deeply keto adapted, then keep fat high because your body's using it effectively.
Also, I'm going to add in this, and this might be a touchy subject, but if you'll notice the people who use on a ketogenic diet, use carb ups, tend to be higher protein. And I think it's because and this is just what I tend to see. I think it's because they're not getting enough energy on a regular basis, as Robert or myself would, just keeping that fuel source high, so they feel at a lack of energy, and then when they have a carb up, their body's going to use that immediately, and there goes the reason why they feel better. But it's
Boom.
only
This is
for
why I married you.
it's only for a short period of time. So just look at the people who are, doing those things, and maybe why they would work together, and why people are using certain things when you could just really make it super simple for yourself.
Can't wait to hear you and Sean Baker. My kidneys hurt with high protein.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, how high is your protein relative to fat? Just out of curiosity.
Keto Brick is the best pre and post workout.
Not to sound, you know, like a salesman or
Not to,
anything,
but we're going to.
but the keto brick is pretty solid for a post workout meal because you don't want, like, I personally don't want to have a huge meal that early in the day because I train early in the morning, so I don't want to have a huge meal that early in the day because whether you're keto or not, if you have a huge bolus of food, you're just going to feel more tired, like your body's going to be in more of a parasympathetic state. But I need to be focused on business. I need to be like super, sharp during that time. So I like to pound a brick because the brick isn't heavy enough. It doesn't sit heavy enough on me to make me feel lethargic, but it does give me a pretty good little bump in protein and fat post workout. So I'm able to have that nutrition, but not feel lethargic for the rest of the day. It's not too
Oh,
salesy.
I'm so sorry. I flipped you guys around for somehow. Okay, post. Oh, got it. Okay.
Any other questions?
We got a hey savages. I get to the gym pretty early and always fuel up with a bang. Fasted otherwise. What are your thoughts on that? Not sure if it somehow spikes glucose due to creatine or other stuff.
So a Bang energy drink, from like a sweetener standpoint, obviously isn't your most ketogenic friendly option. However, you're referencing it. You're asking about it with regards to the creatine and the sweetener, glucose spike, and it breaking your fast. So if you're about to train, any minuscule amount of a spike in glucose or insulin you're going to have from a Bang energy drink is going to be depleted throughout the course of the workout. So I wouldn't really lose any sleep over that at all. I mean, that's not really going to be sitting heavy in your stomach. You're going to burn through that. So I would think having a Bang energy drink prior to a workout is totally fine in that regard.
Mm-hmm. Someone said death wish for a pre-workout keto brick cereal post-workout.
Can't beat that. Makes sense. Thanks, Crystal. Too high CV protein over 180 grams. What is CV? Current. I don't know. What is CV?
Protein. Gosh, we're the worst at those.
I'm not very good at acronyms. So
yeah,
let me know
we're
what
terrible
CV
at acronyms.
Is.
Okay, so what about the topic that Metabolic Mike covered, saying that HIIT and cardio fasted in the morning and strength training in the evening? I don't know if you covered that already. I haven't seen that actually.
I haven't seen that, but I have seen some literature that's pretty compelling that illustrates that strength training in the evening is going to be better than in the morning because like your body's more awake. You're probably going to push a little bit heavier weights, all of those factors. However, a lot of it is kind of lifestyle dependent. Like even if I'm getting a slight bump in performance from training later in the day, I feel like I'm sacrificing because my sleep isn't going to be as good. Probably I'm just going to be laying in bed longer, awake. So my recovery is going to be hindered, and then also I just don't. It just doesn't fit with my day-to-day schedule as well. Like I'm not going to be as productive with my work, with my business. Like I like starting the day off with a workout and then going downhill from there from a physical standpoint. Like I switch gears from physically fit in the morning and intense in the morning to mentally sharp throughout the rest of the day. I do like doing a little run in the evening, but I personally don't like training in the evening.
I will say that when we were training first thing, like I'm waking up, a really hard time with that. My body had a really hard time adjusting. However, if we wake up at 3, we go on a early morning walk at 5:30 and then train right after that. My body is awake, it's alert, it's ready to go. So it maybe if training in the morning isn't as much as an advantage for you, maybe just try waking up a little bit earlier, warming up a little bit, and then getting to your workout. And then I really maybe science can say something different, but I personally believe that it is totally up to the individual because I used to work out in the evening and I found that it really wrecked my evening because I would work out, then I would get this adrenaline rush and I would have a harder time falling asleep. So I ended up staying up later. So I ended up waking up later. So that's just my personal opinion. I think it kind of depends on each individual and your lifestyle.
Arlene says CV stands for carnivore. Thought we should probably know that.
I think we did that last time.
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably. So yeah, if you're at 180 grams, Arlene, and you're not feeling good, I don't know what your weight or lean mass is, but 180 grams is a pretty good bit of protein. I mean, that's a lot for me, depending on what I'm trying to do. So I could say you probably could do with less protein. You may have hit your protein threshold, especially if you're in pain or feeling bloated or just not really feeling good at that intake.
Keto Sasquatch said, as Robert would say, titrate.
Yeah, I do use that word a lot. Apparently.
Yeah, you do. Have you been in a heated debate with anyone about anything related to keto and why? We try not to get in heated debates. Most of the time, those end up poorly.
Yes, but I have been in a lot of debates.
Yeah,
and I definitely have a certain stance on certain things. But I try to be respectful and proactive with my debating.
And we try to be very open-minded. So a lot of the time, in my mind, debates are not worthwhile if you're talking about science because you can have facts and you can have opinions and you can have all of these things And I think each individual needs to gather the information and go do the research for themselves. Debates are really, really great, but at the same time, I think that everyone needs to have an open mind and understand each side and why each person does what they do.
Yeah. Matthew is 195 and eats 180 grams of protein. So, yeah, I mean, that's pretty adequate. Adele says, what should our rest period be in between sets if we train in a fasted state? Dead, squats, bench, heavy. All right. So, generally speaking, I do not really take a rest in between sets for most lifts. I like to kind of do unrelated movements, but keep my body moving. So I'll do like bicep curls, for instance, or tricep extensions. Then I'll superset that with like an ab exercise or a calf raise or something of that nature. If you're doing something like dead squats and bench, those are all very heavy compound movements. I will rest in between them. I don't have like a timer or anything like that where I'm calculating that so it's the same each time. But usually I'll do something simple like go get a drink of water or just like walk around for like, I don't know. I take a pretty short rest. It's like 45 seconds, maybe a minute, but not ever longer than that.
I'm not sure I understand this question. Oh, I see it now. It looked like 13 and 14. What is the relation between carbs and T3 and T4?
So, you got it?
Yeah, I can cover this a little bit. So, I don't know what part you're kind of talking about, but a lot of times people will talk about using carbs with trying to heal thyroid and other hormones, if that's what you're talking about. I'm hopeful. And you can accomplish. I've not actually known someone personally that actually like did a whole healing process using like carbs in a strategic way in order to heal, maybe to make it better for the time being. But I find that most people with a consistent ketogenic diet end up doing a lot better. And especially if they're eating enough calories and they're eating enough fats, that your hormones will naturally regulate. Now, I don't know if that's the aspect of the T3, T4 that you're talking about, but you can actually accomplish the same thing as far as healing goes with just a strict ketogenic diet as you can with carb ups.
Arlene says, can low sodium cause water retention and swelling? Not about fasting again. Trust if you're too low, you can have water retention if your sodium is too high. There's an equilibrium that exists between your water intake, your sodium, your potassium, your calcium, magnesium, all of that. Typically, it's mostly focused on sodium, potassium, and water. So that equilibrium is going to be different. It can be titrated up or down depending on how long you're giving your body time to establish that equilibrium. I personally like doing a 2-to-1 ratio. I personally do about 4,000 milligrams of sodium and about 2,000 milligrams of potassium. Play around with those numbers, see what feels good for you, but be consistent, kind of track those numbers so that you can establish a baseline.
Fasted cardio versus non-fasted cardio for fat burning. Is there much difference or is there multiple factors? I've heard more and more studies say that there is actually not a difference. And so I don't personally worry about that kind of thing. I worry about more of getting in the cardio, getting in the exercise, getting in the resistance training. But I don't really worry about fasted versus feasted as far as fat burning with cardio. I tend to find that most people do better fasted though, depending on if you're going to do something more like HIIT cardio or LISS.
Matthew says, when trying to drop body fat using keto, should fat be less than protein? If so, by how much approximately? I currently consume 180 grams of protein, around 140 to 160 grams of fat. Carbs are close to zero as possible, but not over 30. All right, so again, I could dive deep into this question.
We should one day just do it.
Yeah, honestly, the answer is it depends. So what I like to do is start with a higher fat ratio and then gradually increase protein until I establish my protein threshold. Then I start dropping protein and fat. That way, total calories are dropping during both phases. When protein is increasing but fat is dropping, total calories are dropping. And then when fat and protein are both dropping, total calories are dropping. everybody's gonna have a different ratio and a different protein gram intake that they respond the best to. So I can't really, tell you what your body's gonna respond best to. I personally like to keep my fats higher than my protein at all times. I'll sometimes go to a 1-to-1 in which my fat equals my protein, but I rarely feel good when my protein exceeds my fat. So figure out what those numbers work best for you, really.
Yeah, and year round, my protein is just under my fat. So everybody's body is going to be so different. And that's why Robert, like as Robert was kind of explaining, you kind of have to find your protein threshold and then kind of figure out what ratio works really well for you as an individual, because everyone's body is going to be so different. The anabolic window is much longer than we originally thought. What matters most is total daily protein intake.
Yeah, that is true. If you're not consuming enough protein, then you're doing yourself a disservice.
Okay, that's what they were talking about. How do carbs and targeted carbs influence thyroid?
Yeah. So
that was what the
on the thyroid, a lot of people are going to have a adjustment to their thyroid output when they lose a considerable amount of weight. That's just kind of one of the byproducts of losing a lot of weight. And a lot of people notice thyroid function upregulate if they introduce carbs. But oftentimes that's noticed because the introduction of carbs increases total calories. A lot of times people are having issues with their thyroid because they're just in a chronic caloric deficit in the first place. You can oftentimes stabilize and benefit your thyroid function by simply eating enough and adequate calories. So don't necessarily look to carbs to fix the problem. That's oftentimes just a band-aid to the real solution, which is to be consuming more calories.
Right. We have, do you guys offer one-on-one coaching? Been keto for 2 months, but feel like I need more direction. Yes, we both do. For Robert, you can go to ketosavage.com. For mine, you can go to ladysavage.com.
It's pretty cool that both of our websites are savage.
We're super savage.
Super savage.
We should probably get in just a minute, but
will creatine break a fast, and what brand do you recommend? Great question, Daryl Osborne. Creatine does not break a fast, especially if you're getting just a plain creatine. I do not recommend getting one with flavor. I just recommend getting a plain creatine monohydrate. There's been more research around that than any other supplement. It's been around forever. It's super solid. You're probably not going to notice a night and day difference from it, but compounded over time, it can definitely have a positive impact. Just get a simple, cheap creatine monohydrate. I get the bulk supplements brand from Amazon. It's like $20 for a kilogram or something like that.
We have a celebration over here because Josh Moore hit a bench PR of 440 pounds for 1 rep today.
That's pretty good. That's a lot more than I can do.
That is amazing. Good job.
That's a lot more than I can do. Arlene wants a deep dive. Dive deep. So we'll do that.
Oh, yeah. All right. So what are the sources of sodium and potassium that we like to use? Potassium, our number one choice would probably be Upgraded Formulas, nanoized potassium.
I also like Relight if you want a powder.
Relight, Redmond Relight. And then for sodium, I just salt my food. So it would be Redmond Real Salt, just salt.
And there is a pretty good amount of potassium in red meat. So keep that in mind too.
Yeah. Yep.
Lana says, how do you know when your protein to fat ratio is where you need it to be, especially if you're trying to build muscle? You just go by how you feel. What are the markers? Okay, so especially if you're trying to build muscle, so that means you're going to be in a caloric surplus, because if you're trying to focus on building muscle, you need to be in a caloric surplus. As far as what you need to feel and what markers you need to be looking for, look for how your performance is. If you're going up in weight, if your recovery is good, then you're probably in a pretty good ratio. If you notice that you're having joint pain and inflammation, or if you're waking up and your glucose is super elevated. If my protein gets too high, my glucose is always going to be trending higher than normal. So I try and titrate that down. So yeah, it takes time. Like, I can't really give anybody a standalone, this is what your body needs, because it's going to be totally different for me than it is for you, than it is for Crystal. But this is the beauty of this whole process. Like, that's why I like tracking data. Like, I'll track my glucose, I'll track my ketones, I'll see how I feel, I'll see what my macros are. If I notice that my performance is upticking, then I'll keep doing what I'm doing, because it's obviously working. If I notice that I don't feel recovered, I'm waking up feeling tired, then I'll tweak some things. Oftentimes I feel better with a higher fat ratio. And as far as like just general protein recommendations, if you're trying to build muscle, especially if you're keto adapted, at least be getting 1 gram of protein per pound of lean mass if your priority is building muscle. That's a good solid recommendation. 0.8 minimum, 1 at least.
I just have to say that does everyone realize how like on top of it Robert is right now? And he's been what day is this? Day 3 of fasting.
Yeah.
It's blowing my mind how much energy you have. So I have this question right here. Dumb question. Fat adaptation. No. Well, I guess that's fine. Explain. And I think that that's a really great topic for next week.
All right. So we'll explain fat adaptation for next week. It's a good one.
Yeah.
Arlene, we're kicking off next week with your question. This may be part of that question. Is high fat beneficial when you are fat adapted? What if you aren't adapted yet? I hope this makes sense. That definitely makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And Arlene, I hate to make you wait for next week, but it's a cliffhanger. So we're gonna talk about this in depth. We're gonna deep dive into fat adaptation next week.
But if you are wondering if you should continue going with high fat, I would do it.
Yes. Spoiler.
All
right. So we love y'all, and we'll see you next week. And bada bing, bada boom. Right?
Just like that.
Just like that.
If you want to have as much energy as Robert, go fast for 3 days.
Ta-ta for now.